Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So for Into Tech, in today's project, we are working on project 8, where I'm going to show how to access basically Amazon S3 from inside the VPC using the AWS CLI and access key. So let's think of it as in real world, servers don't work by themselves. So most of the time on EC2 instance, you need to talk to other AWS services like S3, maybe to store files and to read data, or probably to handle things like backups and logs, right? So in this project, I will walk you through everything step by step. So we will create a VPC, launch an EC2 instance inside of our VPC, and connect it to our instance using the connect feature, and then use the AWS CLI and just to make sure that, our interaction with the S3 is very safe. And if you are learning AWS like I am, in this project is really helpful because it brings big things together, for example, networking and then compute and then also security. And also you will have the chance to do some command lines and, in one simple and hands-on setup, which is the project that I'm doing today. Without wasting any time, let's go ahead and jump into our architecture and see exactly what we're building, because I love showing you guys the architecture that I have. And after that, when we're done, we'll jump right into our console and start building this project. All right, let's go. All right, now that we are here in our architect, let's try to walk through exactly what we have here. So to start this, we have our S3. As you can see, the S3 is located right here, is outside of our region. So let's think of the S3 as like a global service, not really tied up to our VPC. So it lives outside of our private network. So basically we're going to access these through the public, okay? So it is important to separate it, just to basically we want to emphasize the fact that the EC2 instance inside of the VPC must use like some credential like access key and proper networking to reach this S3 right here. That's why we have it outside as in like the public internet. Okay. And then now we have our VPC, as you can see here, which is in our region. So this is the VPC right here. And the role of the VPC is just to isolate network environment inside your AWS. And basically it is defined by your IP address that you have, the range that you have, the subnet, and then the routing rules that you have to be able to have access to outside world, okay, like the public. And then now after that we have our public subnet. As you can see, this is the public subnet right here, which is going to also define exactly how our VPC IP range is going from the public subnet and then to reach like the internet through the internet gateway right here. So we have some rule that we set up our public subnet, okay. And then now after that we have our EC2 inside. As you can see, the EC2. So the role of the EC2 just to basically serve as like a server, so running inside the public subnet, and it's where like we're going to install our AWS CLI and to run like the command that we need to be able to reach our S3 bucket right here. So, and then now we have a security group. The security group rules, as you can see it here, is basically going to serve as a firewall that we're going to attach to our EC2 instance, and that will control the inbound and outbound traffic that coming inside of our instance right here. Okay, so as you can see, we have our network ACL. So the network ACL is just another layer of security applied to the subnet level, just to basically control the in and out of our traffic. We already talked about this. We did some project into our previous video. So if you need more information about this, you can also look it up there, okay? And then we have our route table. So the route table just basically define traffic flows inside of our VPC and just kind of give it like a destination. So like the map used as a GPS to know exactly where you're going. And then we have the internet gateway, which is going to be to connect the VPC to the outside world. So that's basically what we have into architect today. So let's go ahead and jump into our AWS console and then start our project. All right, here first what we need to do is to create our VPC, and you can come here and then search VPC, or you already have here, but if you type VPC here, this is what we have, and then you click on VPC, and then now you want to click on VPC CO region here. Okay, so now the next step will be to create. You want to click on create VPC, and we want to choose VPC more. Okay, and now I'm using VPC more because it's automatically create key compartment that like subnet and route tables and saving time while, still following AWS best practice. That's why I'm using the VPC more. Okay, so now we want to give it a name here. And then now let's name it as Into Tech VPC. And then here I can leave it as default, so the default just to make it like easier. You don't have to change it. We can leave it as it is. Okay. And then now we can leave it as no IPv6 side block. We can leave at default. Tenancy, we can leave it as default also. And then availability zone, we need only one. So for that, we need one. And then now for the public subnet, we need one public subnet. And for the private, we don't need a private subnet. And we don't need no internet gateway. We don't need a VPC endpoint. Those will come later on. Okay. So now we have everything here. Let me just take this one here. Let's name it as fall into tech because it shows here it's going to be VPC on it. So let's just name it fall into tech. Okay. And then now let's click on create. Quick and simple. There you go. Now that one is done. Let's see our VPC, and we have our VPC here, and let's click on VPC, and this is our VPC. Okay. So now that we have our VPC, let's go ahead and create our EC2 instance, which is going to be inside of our VPC. Okay. And to do that, you want to come back here where it's here, you tap EC2 and click on EC2. And I'm going through this fast because by now, we should be able to create a VPC, create EC2 real quick without any problem. So, okay, here we want to come here and then click on launch instance. And then now let's give it a name. Let's name it as EC2 just to make it simple. And here, let's go ahead and then choose the Amazon Linux. Just make sure you're using the free tiers, right? So it's still in the free tiers. And also this one, also the instance type is also in the free tiers. We can leave it as it is. And then for key pair, we don't need a key pair for this one. We can click on proceed without the key pair. Okay, so now we can edit the network setting that we need. And then now here, we need to choose our VPC because we already created the VPC, right? So you want to click here and then choose the VPC that you just created. And then here, for the public subnet, we can leave it as this one. Auto assign public IP, we can use enable it because we want to make sure that if the EC2 will provide automatically EC IP address for us. And then here for security group, we can create a security group right here. Okay, so we can just name it as tech security group. Okay. So that's the security group that we need. And then the description here, we can leave it as we don't need to change the description here. And then here, we want to make sure that we have our SSH here, which is the protocol, which will be TCP, and the range is 22, source from anywhere. And let's just add one more security group, which is going to be STP and from everywhere, also anywhere here. Okay, we can just add that one, make sure that we have our connection that coming from the HTTP and then SSH if we want to use the command line. And then here everything looks good. Let's go ahead and then launch our EC2 instance. Click on launch and there you go. We can go back here and then look our EC2. Let's refresh the page here. After you refresh, there you go. We have our EC2 and it's running. Okay. So now that one is gone. So the next step here is like, let's try to connect into our EC2 instance. Okay. And then now using the EC2 Instance Connect, let us securely access to our server without needing a local SSH client, okay? Which is like perfect for learning and quick testing. So now what we want to do is we want to select our instance that we have and then we want to click on connect. And here we have failed instance connection. Let's say is that the right platform destination or resource and identity policy allow you to, okay. So now we're having one problem here. Okay, generals with Amazon. Okay, we don't need this one here. We can just close it because for this project, we don't really need this one, but let's go ahead and then click on connect. And then as you can see, we already connected to our EC2 here. We can check, let's use the pin Google.com just to make sure that we have connection. There you go. As you can see, we have connection here. Okay. So now let's clear the terminal here. Clear. Okay. So now that let's go ahead and then move into the next step, which is we are going to create a S3 bucket. Okay. And then now just to create a S3 bucket, we can leave this page here and then go back here and let's go ahead and look for S3 bucket, and we want to click on S3 bucket here. And then S3 bucket is usually used for like storing files and then, for image, like application data, logs, and whatever you need. It's just for, storage. Okay. So this service that we're going to use today, which is going to be, so you want to go ahead and click on create one. And then here we'll give it a name. The name will be going to tag S3. Okay. That one is gone. It's good. Let's leave it as default. We don't need to change anything else. Everything looks good. We can leave it as it is and then click on create buckets here. Okay. Oh, so the name Bucket name must not contain uppercase. Okay, so let's just change this. Gonna be S3. Let's leave it as that S. Okay, so let's leave it as foreign to tech. Let's leave it as foreign to tech S3 bucket. Okay, that's good. We can leave everything as default and click on create bucket. There you go. So this is our bucket right here. As you can see, we have our bucket, and then we can click inside of our bucket, and let's go back here a little bit. So if you want to upload file from inside this bucket right here, what you want to do, you want to click on here, and when you click, and then you can go inside the bucket. Right now we are inside of our bucket right here, and now to test, for the test purpose, let's go ahead and upload 2 files from our local machine just to test it, make sure that we have this. So you want to click on upload, and hold on, let's go back a little bit. What we want to upload, we are here, click inside, create a folder. Let's click on upload here, and let's see where we want to. Okay, so from here, you want to go ahead, click on add file, and then now we can choose this file that I have here, and let me see, another CSV file. Okay, so I already choose 2 files right here. So it's gonna be this picture right here and this one, right? And let me add one more. Let's add. Okay, we have 2 pictures and 1 CSV file. So let's click on upload, and as you can see, we have 3 files inside of our S3 bucket. Okay, so now we already created a VPC, create the EC2 instance, and then connect the EC2 instance, which is now we did create the S3 bucket, and then we upload 3 files for test purposes, right? So now let's use our command line now to get access into our S3 bucket from the command line. But now we have one problem here. Before you have access to your S3 bucket through the command line, you need to create the access key. You need to have access key and the secret key first, okay? And then to do that, we want to go back into console right here. And then as we are here, we want to go ahead and then type here I am, and then click on I am right here. All right, now to have the access keys, you come here where you say I am, right? You let me go back a little bit. You type here I am here, and then click on I am. And then now here, when you come here, you want to type on access keys, and it will show you exactly this one. You want the access key for the user reshare, which is mine right here, right? And you click on that, and then now you want to come all the way down where you say create access key. So now you want to click on create access key, and it will ask you the access key best practices alternative right here. And what we need it for today, we need it just to use the command line. So you want to select this command line, and also it will show you exactly this warning right here, but we don't have to worry about it for now, just because, I mean, it's not really a command. That's what it's telling you. You can read it and see exactly what they say, but we want to make sure that we confirm. So click on I understand the above recommendation and want to proceed to create an access key, and then click on create. Okay, and then now you give it a name. So description, access key my S3 get. Okay, you can give it a description and click on create access key. And as you can see, now we already create access key, and then it give you option. This is access key right here, and this is the secret access key right here. So we will need both of them, and you can just basically download it. And as you can see, it is already downloaded here, but we can leave this one as open. So we'll need it. And this one, trust me, is just for this project. I'm going to delete it as soon as I'm done. So we don't have to worry about, someone else having access to it, but they will just create it one time. And then, you don't have to share with anyone else, but we can just leave it as it is now for this project. Okay. So now let's go back into our command line right here. So now the first command line that we want to run here is AWS. But before that, let's make sure that we try to access into our S3 bucket and then see what it's going to show. So it's going to be S3. There you go. And then you do enter. So now it's asking you for your secret access key. And then now we can come here, show, and then we can copy this one and go back into here and then paste it right here and then enter. And it's going to ask you the region, the default region name. You want to make sure that you show them the region that you are. So when we come back here, you want to make sure that we know exactly our region that we located, okay? So we in Virginia right here. In Virginia, this is what we need. Now let's go back here and then get back inside of our VPC. Well, EC2. Let's see EC2 here is going to ask you this is what I need. Okay. This is the region that we need right here. So you want to copy and come back here and paste it right here and then do enter. So now here is asking you for the default format. So the default format is basically telling you exactly, what kind of, like, you want to use the JSON, you want to use like a text, what kind of format here. So we don't really need to put anything here. We can just click enter. And then now we are inside of our, let's see, enter, let's do another enter and then see. So now we can try to log into our S3, and by doing like S3, AWS S3 LS. So we're trying to list exactly what we have and then click. There you go. As you can see, we are inside of our S3 right here. So this is the fall into the S3 bucket. Now we are inside of the S3 bucket that we have. And then remember, if you go back here into our S3 and we click on the S3 here, we remember we have the 3 file, right? So now think of it as like now we're not using the GUI to be able to see what we have inside of our S3 bucket. So we're using the command line. And most of people who work in AWS, they use the command line to be able to do whatever they need inside of the command line, okay? So now what we want to do here, we want to list exactly what we have. You want to type in AWS S3 LS, which is, the list of what we have inside the S3. And then now you want to type in the name of your bucket right here. So the name of your bucket, it will be FIT S3 bucket, and then type enter. There you go. So now you see this is the files that we have right here. So 1, 2, 3. If you go back here, and this is the files that we have. And then when you do the ls inside of your S3 bucket, it shows, the file that we have. So this is basically you using the command line to be able to access to your S3 bucket and using it and then adding file, deleting file, and then creating file however you want. Instead of doing inside of the GUI, like here, this GUI right here, we're not going to use the GUI. We're going to use the command line to be able to create files, to delete file, to copy file, and then show exactly what we have. And when you run this command line right here, AWS S3 LS S3, and then the name of your bucket, it will show you what files you have inside. And then now here, let's do something else. Let's go ahead and then create a new file. So this file is going to be just we're testing to how to create a file. So you want to do sudo that, and then where we want to create the file, which is our temp, that's where we want to create a file, and then we can just name it as txt. So this is basically the name of the file that we created. And then now the sudo here, to run the sudo, you basically asking it to give you the privilege of admin. That's why we're running the sudo. And then touch is just basically how to create an empty file. And then the temp that you have right here, this is basically a temporary directory that we have inside, okay? So this will basically create a file which is going to be named test and then upload it inside the data from like the EC2 to S3. That's exactly what we're doing here. And then you type it here. And then now as you have it, let's go ahead and then run back what we have in here. We should be able to have the test file, which is inside of the EC2, but not here yet, okay? So the file that we create is inside of the temporary, this temp right here. So now let's go ahead, try to copy it here. And then to copy it inside of our bucket, so this test file that we create is inside of our EC2. And then if we want to bring it here inside of our S3, and this is the command that you want to run. So it's going to be AWS S3 CP, which is going to be copy. And then where is the file located at? Is located inside of our temp. The name of the file, which is test.txt. And then that's the name of the file that we have, right? And then now we want to copy it inside of our bucket. Okay, so now we want to put here the name of our bucket right here. So it's going to be S3, the name of our bucket, which is all FIT S3. Like I said, the CP is just basically a command that copies the file from the EC2, send it to inside of our S3 bucket, okay? And then if this work is basically prove that our permission that we have, like the network and AWS CLI, they were set up correctly. Okay, so now we just created this file, as you can see right here, sudo touch test.txt. This file right here is inside of our EC2. So now we're trying to take that file right here, copy it inside of our S3 bucket. So to do that, this is the command that we're going to be running, which is going to be AWS S3 CP, which is copy this file from this directory and then send it here, which is inside of our S3 bucket right here. So now let's go ahead, click on enter, and there you go. So this right here. So we have our file. So now it works, the permission works perfectly, and then we able to access the S3 bucket from our EC2 to the S3 bucket, and then create a file inside of our EC2 and copy that file inside of our S3 bucket. Now, if you go back inside of our S3 bucket, we should be able to find this file right there. So if you go back here, there you go, it's right here. So this one was created from our command line. That's what we created. We created a file inside of our EC2 and then send that file, copy that file here, and we have the file. So now seeing this file here, that will definitely confirm that every setup that we did works perfectly. And then to close this project, basically this project demonstrates how to properly secure have access to your S3 bucket from a VPC using VPC networking, EC2, and then IAM access key and AWS CLI. So basically we create a VPC, create EC2, and then create the access key, copy the access key and the secret key, and went to our CLI and then be able to connect there, have access to our S3 bucket. So basically understanding this workflow is very critical, it's very important. It shows you exactly how the system works and how to interact exactly with your AWS services using the ACLI side, using the command line to be able to have access to it. And then building hands-on project like this just help you solidify that basically, the cloud fundamentals that we need and prepare you for more advanced architecture like a private endpoint, IAM roles, and automation. Understanding this basic, it will definitely set you apart from other people who doesn't understand this. And then when you build this project, you'll be able to go back into them and try them again and understand a lot about it. So we did learn a lot from this one. And now I'm just gonna end this project here, and then I'm gonna say, I cannot wait to see you guys into the next project. So this one was project 8. And then now don't forget to go ahead and then delete all the stuff that you created. VPC, your EC2 Instance, S3 bucket, empty the S3 bucket and then delete everything, okay? All right, thank you guys for being here with me today, and then I cannot wait to see you into the next project.